that I need is one. Reach back to you.
Alright.
Till I know you're the compass that I need. There's one.
Hey.
Reach back to you.
That should work. Alright. Can you guys hear me okay? And am I competing too much with the music? Solution actually is pretty easy. With QuickTime I can set up a movie recording where it just grabs the I think because I'm sitting a little far from the mic, I could bring it a little closer, but I don't know how much closer. There. Is that maybe a little better? So the solution is with QuickTime I can just set up a movie recording and set the iPad as a source, so it'll just grab the screen of the iPad, and then I just select that QuickTime window as my source in OBS and stream. So pretty easy solution there, I think. Let's just turn my... Oh, too loud. Okay. How's that? Microphone check. Testes. 1, 2, 3. Alright, let's paint some shit. How about that? Now I did mention I think I might want to set up a textured underpainting. Autumn, I'm pretty sure. Oh, no, 2 more people came back. I thought maybe you and I were the only ones. There we go. We'll select, move to this layer. And I've been pretty much doing everything with this Nico roll. Just the standard settings. It just kind of gets a texture that I like, so... decisions. What color do I want the underpainting? Yeah, my guess is, like, you know, it's trying to grab that QuickTime window and then stream it, so there's probably gonna be a little bit of craziness, but hey, as long as it doesn't drop the stream, I can deal with that. Right? Alright. So this is literally just setting up some textural stuff to be able to work on top of, just like I would in a oil painting. And I'll play around with it a little bit. I'll get some value modulation. But I'm more concerned with texture on this than I am in setting up values.
And the wind blows free. And when I die, don't bury me beneath the western sky on the lone prairie. Oh, bury me not on the lone prairie. These words came soft and painful.
And then, so this way, like, if,
From the palette,
you know, if I have broken marks, which I tend to when I paint, I don't like to cover every single inch with opaque paint. So this just ensures that it's not white, it's not just gray poking through. It's something hopefully a little more interesting than that.
on the lone prairie, where the rattlesnake
Hello, zombie.
and the wind blows.
Happy Saturday. Now that I think we
In a shallow grave,
have a solution for streaming.
no one's agreed.
You missed the fun hour of the stream constantly dropping.
On the lone prairie. Oh, bury me not on the lone prairie. These words came soft and painfully from the pallid
Tap, 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 tap.
lips of a youth who lay on his dying bed at the break of day. On his dying bed
Oh,
at the break
very nice.
of day.
Alright. Yeah, that's probably too saturated. Um, I don't usually set the lines to multiply, but in this case I might, just so I don't lose them. Boom. Alright. Lock in some colors. Okay. I don't know why I've been doing this lately, where I haven't really considered the color scheme beforehand. I don't know why. I should know better. Gotta plan this shit. But it's cool. Whatever. So, what I've found in Procreate for myself is I'll tend to do this. So, working on the face right now, I'll kind of just lightly, so you can see I have my opacity turned way down on this brush. You know, it'll vary from brush to brush, but this one goes from transparent to opaque very quickly, so I have it turned down quite a bit. You know what I might do though? I might set up some shadow shapes first. Shit. Well, a couple things first. One, I want to get those too big. Too much. Sorry, I just wanted to get some little bit of detail in the beard over there. Yeah, I might set up some shadow shapes here. Because one of the things I like to do is I like to unify the shadows a little more if I can. So let's do that on this layer instead of getting a color on the face. And this color will totally kind of shift around as I actually start to paint, meaning the shadow color, but I like to establish something. And so a nice kind of safe, generally safe shadow color is somewhere around here, I think. It might be a little too purple. We'll see. But this will just kind of get this shape, and like I don't tend to think directly in like, oh, this exactly this color, right? When I'm doing something like this, all I'm really looking at is giving myself a base to work with, and then it's just a matter of kind of pushing and oops, wrong. Sorry, I just want to. Get this going and then see if we want to do a little more to it. So all I'm really thinking about most of the time is just kind of pushing and pulling the hue, right? So does it need to go warmer or cooler? And that's really all I'm thinking about. Sorry, I keep wanting to hit my Photoshop hotkeys. Which are not the same. I will get the hang of this keyboard eventually. I might have to switch back to the other one that actually has a command key on both sides. Anyway, so what I was trying to say before I confused myself is that a lot of times I'll set up kind of a base color and then and it doesn't have to be anywhere near what the end color is, right? But it just gives me an immediate point of reference to then push or pull warmer or cooler, lighter or darker. And it sort of, I think it takes some of the other guesswork out of it. Oh, really? Are you catching the? Are you? I think you're. I don't want a microphone. Hmm. Hang on. Let's see if I do this. Okay, how's that? Microphone wise. Am I still doubled up? Sorry, I didn't realize that QuickTime was actually catching my voice. Good? Awesome. Word. Now you can see Autumn texting me. Alright, where are we? Oh, we're on a very tiny little brush. That's where we are. Word. Sorry, this is all a work in progress. Like, first time trying to stream Procreate and had to jerry rig something together. Not really, it's actually a very worthwhile solution. I just didn't know that QuickTime would actually capture the audio like that. Now I know. So this is almost like a duotone extreme version of where I'm gonna land, right? Because I have these cooler shadows set up, so I'm going for some warmer lighting, but not this extreme, obviously. This is just what I'll do after this point is I'll just start going in, painting pretty opaque on top of this on another layer. Fuck it. So we're just wanting to set up some kind of a shadow shape, and this allows me to see it and then kind of adjust it to make it more interesting if need be. Hopefully not less interesting, though that happens sometimes too. Start making changes and you look at it, you're like, no, wait, it was way cooler before. Go back to that. So much easier in digital. Right? The worst is when you take pictures of your progress on like an oil painting and then you look back at a certain point and you're like, what the fuck? I should have stopped back then. And it's far too late. You already ruined it. Don't quit your day job. One of the things I like about this brush the Nico roll brush is I like the you can see the way it kind of rotates like that. I like that because it adds a bit of kind of organic nature to it. Oh, but man, I can't wait for their new brush engine. It's exciting. And layer clipping, which is more exciting. Honestly, like I'm more excited about layer clipping than I am the brush engine, because whatever, we can make this brush work. It's not like flats and oils have infinite variation either, right? So that part doesn't bother me terribly. But the layer clipping will speed things up, which I kind of feel is sort of the point of doing this stuff digital at all, is because it's faster. And if a process starts taking me too long, where I feel like I probably could have gotten this done, like with 1 extra hour, I would have had a real oil painting to show for it. That kind of defeats the purpose. So this is, I'm liking the shadow shape overall. Just seeing if there's, I don't need it to be perfect because I am going to be, painting into all of this, but I just want to make sure that it is at least. This is where also once I actually start painting, I like to change my eraser to the same brush that I'm painting with, so I don't have a huge discrepancy in textures. Makes it a little easier to just kind of switch back and forth and keep a pretty consistent look to the whole thing. So that's pretty red. I ain't mad at that. If you want to, get into a little more clear definition on form shadows and cast shadows, Smudge Tool is fantastic for that. I use the shit out of the Smudge Tool, no matter what application I'm using. Photoshop, I use it all the time as well. Not sure what looks like I have this set to the Nico as well. Ha! It's like the Nico is kind of my go-to so far. It also depends on, I think, what I'm doing. There are some other brushes where I see a ton of potential and they're really cool. I'm just like, with what I'm trying to achieve right now, they don't necessarily, they don't do what I want. I don't always like to zoom in too much because you'll start to get too myopic on something, and when it doesn't matter yet. All right. I think that's good enough to start doing some real painting. And it's funny, I was telling Autumn the other day at work, like, so used to Photoshop, I keep wanting to save. Like, keep freaking out, thinking like, oh my god, I gotta save, I haven't saved. And of course, Procreate, you don't have to worry about that. Granted, might get a corrupted file, and that would be unfortunate. Okay. Right. Let's paint some shit. And what I'll probably do along the way is I'll start painting, and probably at a certain point I will lighten up the line layer because I don't actually want the lines in the final version. Even though, like, you know, it's cool and it gives it this nice sort of stylization, but that's not actually the look I'm going for right now. I know it seems silly to put all that into the line work and then get rid of it, but whatever. I do what I want. Alright. Alright, let's see where we're at here. Cool. So I usually do this just to kind of reinforce a bit of the shapes I'm gonna work with and build up values a little. Might turn up that opacity just a bit. Too much. Boy, it will be nice not to have those annoying lines scrolling, because I don't think you can hide the selection lines, right? Like you can in Photoshop. So what I really quickly want to establish, again, this is kind of just a personal way. I think everyone has their own sort of approaches. Mine's the best way. No, just kidding. It's not really. I bet there are people who would have been like halfway done with this by now. Bastards. Just want to get into some mid-tones here. Just lightly. Lightly get some. Although I should probably also paint into these shadows. Just because right now that extreme color difference, and I'm making gestures as though you can see right now, and you totally can't. But the extreme color difference between the shadows and the lights is really making it look like sunset, and that's not quite what I want. So let's grab something like that and start to get rid of that super blue color. I don't mind if it's a little golden hour-y. Like, that's cool, but I don't want it that extreme. And I kind of just want to give myself a base. He's got He's got dark hair. Just gotta kind of decide how dark. If I want to go black, then I can go with something much cooler. Or do I want just like a really dark brown? You might have a little bit of gray in there. So the reason I do this beforehand, the reason I go like really kind of light with some of this stuff is it's sort of like mixing on the canvas, right? And it gives me a nice base color. It allows me to work a bit more quickly where I don't have to finesse in the palette trying to find the exact color that I want. This gives me a base to then color pick from and kind of start to get that stuff in there. Right, so I can then take this mixed color right here, which I'm gonna do, and I want to cool it off a bit. I don't want it so hot because I don't want it to read too much like he's got like straight brown hair. I do want it to feel a little more like black hair without actually going black with it. But we'll get pretty close. And what's nice, you know, with a little bit of transparency, it's a little too small. If you get some of the overlap in the marks, that can sort of fake some detail. Because, you know, what are we doing if we're not faking it? Into this face a little bit. I might actually lighten up these lines already. Because if you start to really paint like and you're worrying too much about the lines, then all of a sudden you become a part of the artwork, whether you want them to or not. So sometimes it's good to start to drop them out. Now I'm going to have to kind of push and pull this guy a little bit because I'm not actually trying to paint myself, but he's starting to look a lot like me. That wasn't really my intention. but with a way better hairline. Bastard. Little smudge action here. A little too big. So you'll see I will use the hell out of this smudge tool to finesse various shapes. So grab that. And you'll see, like, I'll almost always just kind of color pick something and then push it around. So I want to lighten this up, desat it. You pretty much never want to go full white in the whites of the eyes because they're pretty much never fully white. This will be like one of the few times you'll see me go right to black. And actually, I kind of want to give this guy like these sort of lighter eyes. This is one of those things where I'm not too concerned with like how realistic the eye color is. It's a fantasy world. Plus, I hear that a lot of people in Spain will get these almost like golden colored eyes, so maybe we have a precedent for such things. And you'll see I'll rarely ever go to full white, and I'll rarely ever go to full black. But we'll just catch a little bit of glint in the eyes. Actually, sometimes what I like to do, uber close up, just to give us a little sense of like that maybe he's outdoors and there's some sky, right? I'll grab just like a saturated blue and we'll just hint at that. Then we'll go back to our bright sun color, smaller. Too bright. And catch that, just so we catch that little bit of blue in his eyes. Evening, Earl. Yeah, that expression can push and pull pretty quick. So let's get some little more light in here. I feel like this guy's been on the road for a while, so I don't actually want him to have like that fair of skin. Ooh, way too big. And I don't really want to go with like super intense lighting. I don't want to blow it out. Just finesse this stuff in. I like that little bit of color there. Oh man. Thanks, Autumn. Right. What I like about this part of the process is I love how much and how easily you can kind of push and pull shapes and change someone's features like really quickly. And I don't know, it's a lot of fun to kind of explore some of that and see where you can end up. And for whatever reason, I almost always will like start with the face and pretty much like finish it out before I move on. It just kind of, for me, establishes, because that's almost always the focal area, right? And then that establishes my level of detail. Oh, I should probably do the right color. That would be dope. It establishes my level of detail for the rest of the piece, because if I want that face to be the focal point, then I don't want anything else to get that to that level of detail, right? Don't forget those tear ducts. Ah. Ah, it's my little emotes. And for anyone that's seen any of my other colored work, you probably know I'm a fan of red noses and cheeks. I always play up those areas where we naturally like get some blood rushing, and then it's just a matter of finding that balance so that they don't look like they're a drunk or something. For these purposes, let's turn off our selection. So you can see that crazy edge. I almost want to... I think I want to combine these guys. The reason I'm combining them is because I want to be able to control these edges a little more, and I don't want to have to go and battle with 3 different layers trying to figure out like which one is or isn't fucking up my edge. So one of the ways to woo, that got hectic quick. Too big. One of the ways to kind of turn forms is to get a softer edge, right? So a lot of times with hair, you want to do that. You want to get a softer edge on the hair. Unless you are going for something that's really stylized. And I'll get even more so. I'm not like jumping full on into the hair yet. I just want to control some of these. Wow. That got hectic. I just want to control some of these edges. I don't want that aliasing, right? Alright. So, let's do a layer on top. Reason being, I want to paint over some of these lines now on the face. And start to really get a sense of the modeling on him. Thank you, Tativa. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Sorry. I don't want to keep trying and just butcher it a whole bunch, but thank you. I appreciate it. Lighten his eyes a little bit. Especially on the side where the light is hitting him, right? On his right, our left, screen left. Sorry, I want to find where this... there you are. Those little tiny shapes are annoying me. Go away. There. So there are a couple things that I like to get going fairly early on, and some of that is just indicating some of the different planes like fairly quickly. And actually, let's grab this. And one of the ways I'll do that is just if they're outside, like I want this guy to be, just getting some cooler notes, a little bit lighter value-wise. In those, on these planes that might be facing up, right? Toward the sky. Catching a little bit of that sky fill. It just helps to kind of turn some of those. Doesn't always have to be lighter. Remember, you want to rely on temperature before you rely on value, right? So to turn forms, it's usually better to start by changing the temperature before you change the value. So again, I just want to cool this off a bit. I'm not trying to go really cold on it, but I just want to cool it off a bit. That might be too much, because then I'm going to desat it. And I'm just looking at the little swatch up on the right to see the difference between that original color and where I'm going. So I don't want to go too crazy. Alright. Right, now that just helps me kind of face those planes, some of those planes up more in a subtle way. I'm trying to focus while my cat is like going nuts on my foot, because for some reason these shoes, the leather just drives her crazy, so she just like attacks them and rubs her face all over them. She's special. No. I always have all these little things that I do, and it's tough because once you start like kind of just developing a little bit of a process, you start wanting to do these things on like everything, and you always have to decide like, does it work or not? You know, like I always want to catch the corners between forms like I'm doing right now, and that comes, you know, partly just from I like making things a bit architectural in some ways, like not super overt but a little bit. If you look in like the corner of a room, almost always that corner along the two walls is like catching the light in an interesting way. And so I sort of will treat the figure that way a bit. Sorry, I'm just wanting to cool off some of this stuff that's not actually closer to us. I'll do that as well. Like, I'll try and reserve more of the heat in the form for areas that are closer up. Just I don't know if that's a personal preference, or I feel like it's a fairly standard painting trick. That's all we do. Just do tricks. It's amazing how much, like, the slightest little bit off on something can sort of throw the perspective. You will see. Sorry, once I get my colors going, I color pick the hell out of it because it helps me keep the entire thing unified versus constantly grabbing like a new color, which might throw something off. So once I kind of have a bit of a palette established in an area, I will pretty much just color pick the shit out of it. Stinking zombies. So this is, I know that like this color right here is basically just the underpainting showing through, and that's fine, but I actually want it not so rust colored. I want a little more heat in that, and it'll help identify it as really being part of the form, not just some of that underpainting showing through, which I don't mind. Like I love that look, but I also want to sort of reserve that for, you know, where I really want it to happen. I don't want it everywhere. Smudge Tool. Just really want to get a sense of some kind of ambient light bouncing around. A sense of a more wide open space. It's not me, that's from the Undead Nightmare soundtrack. He says stinking zombies. I've got nothing but love for zombies. They just want to hug you. Start to bring some little bit of modeling and form into the hair. And it's always I don't know, it's always a question for me of like how realistic do I want to go with the hair? And I don't love like really painting up hair. I don't always think that buys us much. Sometimes it does if your goal is to, you know, go for like really photographic, like hyper realism. Cool. But I like to have a little bit more, I don't know, I don't want to say style and offend anyone, but I'd like there to be more of a look to my painting. If I can do that, I will. So I don't like to fully paint up all the hair. Yeah, I don't think that is really giving us too much. Highlights, some highlights. Strictly speaking, it's like it's early to get into any highlights, but because, like I said, I like to finish off the face, or more or less. It won't be completely finished by the time I move on to other stuff, but it'll be really well on its way. And because the highlights help you to further kind of define a form, so it can help to, if you're not quite sure, right? Like his nose, the tip of the nose is broader than I want now, and that highlight kind of helped me to see that. So then it's just a matter of kind of starting to push and pull some of these forms a little more. Not too dark. On one hand, it's kind of annoying that I can't really control the size variation on this brush. On the other hand, I don't mind that terribly, because it allows me to just kind of go back and forth a little bit and like cut into shapes to fine tune them, and that's a fun process as well. Earl, yeah, it is actually a character from a novel that I'm chipping away at. A written novel, though, not a graphic novel, so there's really no strict need for me to design the characters. But I kind of like, I don't know, having something to reference a little bit. Of course, then the danger is when you're trying to describe something, you might sit there trying too hard to describe exactly what you drew, and that's not always a good thing, because chances are that's just not how people are going to see it in their own mind, right? So it's like, then you just have to kind of take what you drew and just give a loose description, and just accept the fact that people will see whatever they see. I realize it's probably a little annoying on the digital side because you can't actually see my hand, so I'm like jumping around from this place to this place, and you guys just gotta like try and kind of keep up. Whereas if you could actually see my hand, you'd, just be able to follow that. I kind of want to give this guy a little bit of like white in his hair because I want it to be a little ambiguous in terms of, like he's not going to have a whole lot of lines in his face, but he could be older, he could be younger. I mean, I've known people that went completely gray by the time they were in their late 20s. So, not unheard of. And a couple of white streaks just look kind of awesome. Right? Just make us more distinguished. I wish I had, like, wow, that really ages him up. I don't hate it, but I'm not totally sold on it. It doesn't help that I have not decided exactly what age I want him to be. It's cool. I can always paint it out. No biggie. For now, I'm kind of digging it. Let's get a hint of that bottom lip in there. Just a little bit. Okay. This is where I want to redo the shape of his nose a little bit. Again, it doesn't help that I don't know exactly what I'm going for. This is the challenges sometimes, right, of actually making something up, is that, well, you have to make it up. So there'll be a lot of just kind of pushing and pulling until you find something that feels right to you. And that's where sometimes finding a character can be very challenging. Right? Infinite possibilities. So hopefully you have a little bit of an idea of what you're going for. Enough to give like just a hint, just a little bit of a roadmap, right? Just want to cool off this plane a little bit. Yeah, I had a writing teacher that had just kind of explained it as like, look, I could give you a 3-page description, of the exact shade of white of my house, the exact type of shingles on the roof, a lengthy description of the oak tree in the backyard, the type, or in the front yard, the type of oak tree that it is, the type of white fence that we have, and the type of flowers that are under the window, and I could go on and on and on. And when you saw it, you would know exactly which house it was. Or I can tell you it's the white house with the gray shingled roof, the white picket fence, and an oak tree in the front yard. And when you saw it, you'd know exactly which house it was. So he was just kind of saying, like, you have to pick your battles in your descriptions, right? There are certain descriptions that are really important, and others that aren't as much, and you don't need to like describe everything. Sorry, I'm losing my core shadow here, and you don't want to do that. Core shadows are important. Don't want to lose them.
Hello.
Hello.
Amazon delivery?
Okay, cool. You can just leave it there.
Alright.
Thanks.
Enjoy your weekend.
You too. Amazon delivery. Yeah. Should have been like, oh cool, hey, I'm streaming on your product. He wouldn't care. I want to desaturate some of this stuff. It's like getting a little cartoony in some of the colors. In some cases that can work, and in other cases I don't want so much heat in the colors. I know it looks a little more desatted on the stream actually than it is with what I'm looking at. I'm gonna go with no. Hey Mario, welcome back, sir. I'm gonna go with no, we're not gonna draw that. Big resounding no. Oh, Smudge Tool. That's why. I was like, what the hell? It's not doing anything. Let's make that. I want to make the highlights on his hair have a little more color. It's funny, I wanted to desat some of the shadows, but I want highlights in the hair to have a little more color, because I want there to be a difference between those and the gray, right? The gray and the beard. I had a couple people ask on Instagram, like, what my process was and what brushes I used and what layers I use, and well, there's no big secret. These are just normal layers, and I'm using a stock brush for the painting. You know, just the Nico Rull. And I'm just painting. I'm just using what I know about oil painting and applying it here. So there isn't a secret to this shit, at least not the way that I do it. Just is what it is. Full on painting and color theory. Whee! This frown's getting a little too hectic here. Let's see, we can't. I don't want him to be like pissed off. Maybe he's upset that he's having to stand there for so long while I push and pull his features around. Yeah, it does pretty much just come down to straight painting skills, I suppose. Trying to decide on these. Punch up the cast shadows a little bit. So let's darken and heat them up a little. Not much. Yeah, I'm just catching that cast shadow from the nose. I want to catch this one that would be cast across his cheek from the eye. I think that's about it as far as the cast shadows go. And then we're gonna play up a bit of the Transillumination, right, which is basically just where we can see the light coming through any of the forms. So the nose tends to be somewhat transparent. It'll catch light will bounce around, and so in that core on the nose, I usually like to catch a bit of that heat. I'll sneak it into areas in the eyes. any of these areas where it might just be kind of thin enough to be catching catching some of that. And then that's a little too much, although I kind of don't hate that, but let's darken it. No, so here's what we'll do. Sometimes we gotta do this. Just kind of setting up the rest of the forms around the nostril a little bit. Right, getting essentially what'll end up being more core shadows. And then we can throw in a little hot accent. Little details that sometimes I think I just do because they're fun. Not because, oh, it needs it and it'll make it better, but they're fun to paint, so I paint them. No, the soundtrack never gets old. And yeah, Zombie, I agree. I think what I might do with this, with the setup that I have now, I think I might be able to put a camera on my actual iPad and just have that up in the corner, just so that at least you can get a sense of maybe where my stylus is moving. Because, yeah, it's a little weird because it's just going to look like things are bouncing around and randomly appearing. I fully agree. So we'll figure out a good solution to this. While I do tend to like to just have the hair really just be a graphic shape, I do want to detail it a little bit, you know, get a little more feeling of the actual hair, so it's not just you know, just a kind of cartoony, blocky shape. But I don't mind that as kind of the silhouette. I just don't want it to be too simplified compared to the rest. Just trying to unify some of that stuff. And also deciding how much light I want to cast on his hair. Because that I'm not sure yet. Okay. I'm gonna get rid of a couple of things because I want to be able to paint them in rather than like paint them in more naturally. So these wisps coming out. I just want to clean up some of that. And then I'll paint them in. Might help if I had a little bigger eraser for that. Damn it. Should have gotten rid of that underlayer first. The reason is because I want to come back in and paint that and control the edges more. Damn it. Which one is catching? So annoying. So annoying. We'll get it. We'll get it. Yes. Alright. Alright. Annoying. Done. So... So then what I'll tend to do with this kind of stuff is I'll get, you know, some of these forms in. I'm not worrying yet about like how clean or whatever they are. I just want to give myself something, in this case, something organic to work with. And then I'll come in with a smudge tool and finesse them a little bit more. Of course, when you get shit like that. This is the annoying part for me of working on multiple layers. And inevitably, there's always a point where I get annoyed enough where I'm just like, screw it, and I pretty much just merge them all. But that's usually when I'm far enough along that I know I'm not going to have to go back and forth. With the smudge tool, it's almost like you have to build up enough. It's like if you don't have enough paint, right, to push around, then it's just gonna act weird. So you just need to make sure that you have enough. They don't have a hotkey for the smudge tool, and it really annoys me. I keep wanting to hit D, which is my hotkey for a smudge in Photoshop, and it doesn't do anything. Alright, we'll probably fine-tune the hair at a later date when I do have everything kind of merged down and I can not battle with the layers as much. There we go. Hey there, Kayome 911. We'll just call you 911. And hopefully Siri doesn't freak out. Eyebrows, eyebrows. It's always a good idea to... Am I on the right layer? No, I'm not. To catch some light on the eyebrows, because they will catch light and they do have actual form, right? They're not just these flat shapes. So it's a good idea to model them a little bit. There's always a balance. Like, I still tend to think of things very much like oils, so I will think of like how heavy the paint is in an area, even though I know there's not actual paint, right? We all know that. But in oil painting, one of the things you always have to be aware of is that on a subtle level, it is three-dimensional, right? As you build up paint, you're building up form, and that form is closer to you. So a lot of times, for like, if a face is turned in 3/4 like this, now it's tough when I also have the light source coming more from the far side. But a lot of times you want the paint on the far side of the face to be thinner than the parts of the face that are closer to you. You know, but because we have a tendency to paint heavy in the lights and keep the shadows pretty transparent, that can be an interesting challenge when you're working in actual paint. But it's also something to be aware of with the digital side, I think. Because it can give that illusion, right? Like, the shadows are kind of more transparent in here. And so if I get too heavy, let's pick this light color. If I get too heavy on the screen left side of the face, it can start, see, like this. It can start to pull that forward in a way that I don't want. You know, now it's creating this optical illusion that I don't want. Autumn, thank you so much. And thanks for gifting that sub to Zombie. That's so cool. So you can see that light part of the face is just popping way forward and competing with parts of the face that should be closer. So that's why, even though technically it's getting more light than the part of the face that's closer to us, I'm keeping it a little more subtle because I don't want it to jump forward. One of the ways that I could address this, though, and we can give it a shot, is to cool it off. So even though it might get light, if we cool it off, then hopefully that will help it sit back further. So there are ways that we can kind of. Archer Kell is live. So that at least helps it sit back there, and then we can just warm up the bridge of the nose here to bring that back forward, right? So that it's not battling with that other side of the face. Kiva. Oh, so that's Gaelic, huh? That's cool. I like that more than 911. I always loved that as a language. I think it's such an interesting language. Confusing when you're really just when we're coming from like modern day English, so we want to pronounce things in certain ways, but a really cool. I love the sound of it. So get back into a little bit more color theory just for the hell of it to explain my thought process here. This I'm not actually going to change the value, and I'm going to work on the screen left side of the face. I don't want to change the value, but I am going to cool it down to help turn that form. So rule of thumb for painting, change the temperature before you change the value. Right, because a change in temperature will also turn the form. And then then you can get into a little bit of value shift, which I'll do kind of just right on the edge to help sort of sell that that form turning away. A little too dark there. Oops. Yeah. Just finessing some of this stuff. Alright. Do want to get a bit more color. He's getting washed out, even more washed out in the stream there. He at least looks a little more saturated on my end. But I just want to brush in a little bit of color that I will keep light. I just don't want him to look pasty. Right. Always got to kind of push and pull, because sometimes you start getting too clever for your own good of like, oh, I'm going to desat this instead of whatever, instead of changing the value or instead of doing something else, and then before you know it, it's all just too desaturated, and that's not a good thing. Unless that's what you want. Then cool. Desat away. Cool. All right. One last little bit here, and then I'm probably gonna call it. I gotta go and get ready for dinner with girlfriend. But I hate leaving when I see something. I'm like, no, I gotta address that. And sometimes if you don't have a choice, then you just gotta make a note somewhere. And I will sometimes. I'll just have a layer where I'll just jot down like, okay, hey, next time, address this thing. But I try not to leave those things undone. Just want to reinforce some of these shapes that I had set up. There we go, that's better. All right. A little bit. Okay. I think I'm gonna call it for today. Sorry, that first hour it just constantly was dropping the stream, but at least I have a way around that now, so that's a good thing. Maybe I'll replay at least what I did. I don't know if that'll be interesting or not, but this was just like in the first part, bringing that pen sketch in and then creating some clean digital lines that I could paint underneath. You can see I tweaked the the sketch where it's cut around his knees, and I didn't finish his feet out, and I ended up shrinking his head a little bit and raising it up to lengthen his neck because he was starting to look a little more stocky than I wanted. But I didn't necessarily want to go full on like superhero proportions either. So the first hour of the stream really was, me doing the line work, and then the oh so fun part of setting up the selection set. Just doing that silhouette. It's not very fun to watch. Yeah, it was mostly because there were things I needed to correct from the ink sketch too. Some perspective issues that were making things read a little weird. His belt was at the wrong angle and some other stuff. Yeah, then once we got the sketch going, the drawing should happen here pretty quick. Then we laid in our silhouette. Which, again, I know, not super fun. And then after the silhouette, I just wanted like a colored, textured underpainting that I knew would kind of show through in some areas. Just wanted something more interesting than like gray. So that's really all I was doing at this point. And then afterward, just got into setting up some the shadow shapes, like the design of the light and the dark. Yeah, just finessing that shadow shape. And then started getting into it in the face, right? I wish in the recording it would somehow record like exactly how it was on the screen, so it would zoom in to the areas that you were zoomed in on, but it would probably take up a lot more space that way, so I'm okay with it just recording the brush strokes. Anyway, I think most of you saw from at least here on out. Getting those highlights. He was starting to look a little more grimacy than I wanted. I wanted more of like a pensive kind of a look rather than looking like pissed off at something, so oh, and then struggling with the hair. But yeah, a lot of that stuff, like, there will be a lot of edge finessing when I get right toward the end of the piece. For now, it's just working with the main parts of the form. So that's our recap. Thank you all for tuning in and joining us, joining me And yeah, I'll be back on Monday. I don't know exactly what time. It'll probably be an afternoon thing, would be my guess. But it might be morning. But I'll give you guys a heads up tomorrow as far as what time I'll be on Monday. So thank you. We won't drop the stream next time. At least I hope not. Alright. With that, I bid you all adieu. See you around.